Hi, I do want to talk about one other thing quickly that related to reference lists and APA citation and formats for those that's not addressed in your book. But generally, I would say that your Rules for a Writer book is a great resource on how to document both MLA and APA sources, depending on what kind of paper you're writing here. It has all the templates and formats that you need to look at. Never, ever, ever try and write a reference list without first looking at the template for the kind of entry that you're putting on your reference list. Don't try and do it by memory. Make sure you're following the guide that they provide you in this book explicitly. So use that. There is, however, one little quirk, one thing that they don't actually talk about in this book that I want to go over. So I'm going to provide a few examples for articles in anthologies and references and look at a small quirk there. So if you look at this document, it is a sample reference list with two entries, both articles from the anthology that is your textbook. Now, the one thing I want to point out is how they deal with dates. Generally, as I said, your book does a good job of noting the kind of templates that you use for your reference list paper, but there is one thing that they fail to mention, and that deals with articles reprinted in an anthology that actually come from earlier editions. Now, it's just like noting the entry they have in the book. Basically, you start with the author, the date of the publication you are looking at, right? So if you are looking at the they say, I say textbook, then that date would follow here, the title of the article, the editors, the title of the text or the anthology which it comes from, and your textbook is very much an anthology. You do need to, when referencing your anthology, note both the edition and the fact that it's the Wake Tech Community College edition. One thing that's important about citation is you want to give readers the exact edition you are looking at, so that particular editions are going to have different page numbers, perhaps different editorial material. So this information here is absolutely necessary and required. The page number here, where the article appears within the anthology. Then finally, though, the original work was published, I think, in the Atlantic magazine back in 2008. You need to make that clear so that one of the things about APA citation, as I said in the prior video, is that they want to give an indication of how current the information is, so that while this date does give us the exact text we need to find where you were looking for the text you're using, this information here is the exact early date of publication so that readers know which date you're using in your paper. Okay, so that if they wanted to go look at the text you're looking at, they would go look at this one. So I have entries here for both Nicholas Carr's Is Google Making Us Stupid and Clive Thompson's Smarter Than You Think. Just look at these formats so that when you're using articles from your book, you can use this template here as a way to overcome that issue of dates and original publication. And I am going to post this document online. Okay. One other piece of information, some of you may, I don't know how to say this, may have misplaced your Rules for Writers text. If that is the case, there is a number of very good online sources about APA and MLA citation that you can go to. I would Google APA citation and Purdue University, and that will take you to a special website that Purdue has that has a number of examples and templates and instructions on how to use APA citation. Okay, so there's that. One other thing to note too, when when using these kinds of entries in the text of your paper. So let's go back and scroll. I'm going to scroll up and look at the plagiarism activity again. You'll notice here in the text examples for Trevelyan, the author who wrote the article on the Peasants' Revolt, there are two dates here, right? This is the date of initial publication and the reprint. So you should follow this form when you are using authors like this. The original publication 2008, the reprint 2018. So in your parenthetical after the author's name in the text, anytime you use Carr or Thompson, you would use both dates, just like they do here in all of these examples, because we have an original source with two dates. So in the parenthetical here, in this kind of example, two dates. Same thing here when you're just doing the date and the page number is at the end of the sentence, right? So when you're citing your own anthology, and that's likely something you will be doing on your research paper, make sure you're using both dates in the text of the paper, and that on the reference list at the end of the paper, you make clear the original date of publication. Okay? If you have any questions at all about citations, please do not hesitate to email me, and I will try and answer you as best I can. Once again, make sure you have some kind of guide, either your textbook or an authoritative source, as to where to go to, what sorts of templates to use. In other words, what kind of entry, what kind of information you need to provide for particular sorts of entries. This, for example, is going to be an article in an anthology, and there is a good example of that on page, I believe it's 515 in your textbook. There also a typical entry you might have would be an article in a journal. There is a good example for those starting on page 506 in your Rules for Writers textbook. And again, make sure when you're using your reference list that you are actually have the textbook with you, that you can see the templates they use and the information that you will need, and follow their examples as best you can.